Welcome back to another episode of Deal Flow Live. This is actually going to be a pre-recorded episode, and Ryan and I are going to be breaking down a little bit of what kind of stuff comes up as hurdles in SBA deals that make them difficult to do. And the reason we wanted to do this episode is because there are a lot of online gurus out there talking about how easy it is to acquire cash flowing businesses with SBA financing. And in reality, while it is a totally doable thing, it's not quite as easy as they make it seem. And there are some very real things to consider and be aware of that could make it more difficult or prevent you from being able to get a deal done that we just want to talk through and kind of fill you in. These are real challenges that we experienced recently on a deal that fell through. We'll just say it.
Yeah.
A deal fell through, and it was a great education and learning experience. And so we want to break down some of the lessons that we learned.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that something we had a discussion with Patrick Lang, who is a very successful broker for businesses, especially in the HVAC space. He mentioned, and he posts about this as well, that nobody talks about the failed deals, the deals that went bad, and everybody always talks about the good deals. So we kind of made it a point to say, look, when things don't go great or they're just like, they just don't pan out, we're going to talk about it. We're going to give, the real realization about it. So I think I guess I'll kick it off. I think the first big thing that I learned is that the SBA is a very ambiguous organization where
There's
just
no
because
clear-cut rules at all.
there are some,
There's
but not
guidelines. That's it.
much like in Pirates. They're more of guidelines, really. Yes.
And the issue stems from the fact that there are like federal SBA SOPs and like rules, but then the actual loan comes through a bank and it's guaranteed partially by the SBA. So when you hear SBA loan, that loan is coming through an individual bank on behalf of the SBA or with backing from the SBA. So ultimately, it's up to that individual bank. So my big recommendation is we should have been going through multiple banks. We should have been interviewing multiple banks to see who could do what, who required what we could get done based on different things. Also, I think as a little bit of a lesson that we learned, we went through a very large established bank thinking that would be a good thing. I think that was a little bit of a detriment because because they're large and established, they would prefer to really just devote their resources to larger deals that are going to net them bigger commissions, bigger interest, et cetera, et cetera. So this was a little bit of a smaller deal. And if you think about the incentive structure, they just don't care about a deal like that as much. They're not going to push as hard to get it done.
It's weird to say, but you're like, at the end of the day, when it comes down to what they're doing, they're saying, here's a sum of money that we expect back in X amount of time with X amount of percentages. So the problem essentially came down to not asking and being qualified. It was more of, we don't think this return on our investment is even worth considering, which is why when we talked to some other people in the industry, they were like, oh yeah, you got to go big, like big when you talk to a big bank. Even if you don't think you're going to get applied or you're going to get accepted, you'll probably get pretty close to it because they'll be like, we can't give you $1 million, but we could give you $750 because they still want that commission. If the business checks out, they're like, yeah, this is 10%. Yeah, we'll take that.
And for a bigger business, they're going to be more willing to get creative on these smaller deals. Like I'll just be very honest. The lender that I was dealing with for this one that fell through because it was a small deal, she played ball at first, but when little things like didn't really fit the deal box to make it happen, she literally just went straight to, oh, looks like it's not going to work. You'll get a declination letter. Boom. Nothing else to be had. She wasn't trying to be creative or say, hey, if we tweak this a little bit, or if you come at it a little bit different way, we can make it work. She was just like, on to the next, whatever, doesn't work. And there's really something to be had about, you're never going to know everything going into an SBA deal. You're never, unless you were a lender before, and that's kind of the background that you're coming from, you're going to have a lot of gaps in your knowledge. And so you're going to partially need to lean on that lender to help fill you in on things and help you get creative potentially. And they're not going to be willing to play ball as much with you in the first place if the deal is not as big. The other thing I would say is, like one big note that I learned that I wanted to leave the audience with is if you are an entrepreneur, start taking W-2 income out of your business as early as possible and as much as possible, because if you're not used to doing that, you might be avoiding doing that so that you can kind of reduce things for tax purposes and pay less taxes and kind of write stuff off more. But it actually could be to your detriment to not be taking much W-2 income out of your business, because it just does not qualify you well in the SBA's eyes. They don't like it. They want to see solid, stable, steady W-2 income.
Or alternatively speaking, if you don't want to do that, or you just think I don't have enough time to show a W-2 for a tax year, have a friend who has a W-2 job and call him up at around 11:15 in the morning at his job and be like, hey, quick, can you please put your name on this thing? I need your help. I'm sure they'll be thrilled if you give them a little bit of a cut into it. Like, that's a dream for most people. But I think having somebody, in this situation who is maybe, I'll call it investor light. They're not full investor ready to get in yet because they can't, but they do have a little bit of cash, or they're willing to put their stuff, a little bit of stuff on the line for you. That could be somebody that you are going to get to help you, because for some reason, they don't need you to be making $700K a year. They just want to see that you hit a minimum threshold that they may or may not tell you, which in this case was not told. Or they'll just, whatever, but they just want to see somebody's got an income where they're like, oh, that's chill. Yeah, he'll support this if it goes south, which again, the lender rules, they kind of slide scale depending on who you're with to fit what they want. Like in this situation, submitted all the paperwork, 2024, obviously made more than 2023. Lender wouldn't recognize 2024. They were like, oh, even though it was filed, done, I had my return to my bank already. They were like, that's just looking at 2023. Actually, it's just you're so short, just a few short. I'm like, really? You have 2024. It's filed. The IRS has the money. So it's good to either start now, make a W-2 for yourself and get it out and start making it happen. Or, like some people do, hire your family essentially. Or if you have somebody who's interested, has a bit of cash, has a W-2, be like, hey, come in on this deal with me, be on this one, and can make it worth your while.
Exactly. One other thing I would say when you're kind of getting into this is, kind of interviewing these lenders is going to be your best friend. I think you should connect with them early and try to get a pre-qualification letter. We recently kind of found out about this actually from my work as a broker, which, I work as an associate broker on some deals on the side, and that kind of align with like everything else that we're doing, or might be outside of the scope of deals that we would do ourselves. And we had a buyer that came to the table that had an SBA pre-qualification letter. I had only really seen that before on the seller side, where the business itself was pre-qualified by the SBA. But it turns out it looks like you can get a pre-qualification letter at some banks for SBA financing. So it could be worth going and getting that pre-qualification letter first so that you can see what you're qualified for. Then you can tailor that to your search for a business and kind of know, theoretically what you would most likely get approved for, and make your search based on that.
Yeah, the realization of a buyer pre-qual letter, because we always knew businesses could be pre-qualified. The buyer realization kind of shocked me because nobody talks about that. I've never seen that ever posted anywhere. And I look at a lot of stuff about this. So I think if you're selling a business, you should definitely give preference to somebody who has that pre-qual letter, because that does show that the SBA has reviewed them as a financial individual and gone, okay, they do probably have the means of making this work. So it's very important. I think it also, if you're looking to make a deal, getting that done on yourself and then going to people, you're going to get taken more seriously, and you're going to, you're going to know what you can and can't do essentially viably. So also, I think it can't be understated here for a third time, interview multiple lenders. You have to go around, talk to people. We thought just one and done, kind of, a little bit of relationship there. Turns out not so much. You have to find more people.
Last note I'll leave you guys on is that we found out the hard way here is it's actually easier to get, we might have said this before, but it's actually easier to get a bigger deal done than a smaller deal. So specifically, it's easier to get a deal done with an asking price above $250K than one under 250K. That's one thing that I got some very specific advice and feedback on. So don't really look at deals below 250K for the SBA. You're going to have a tough time. It's probably not going to work out, and just save yourself the time and go for something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I think yes and no on that one because, well, first and foremost, yes, the small deal going to be a little more difficult. You can go after them, but you're going to be creative with it. You're going to probably need to have investors or cash on hand to do it, or a very good seller financing situation. I'm not saying a small little partner bank wouldn't be able to maybe help you, but you will face a lot of scrutiny. And as the specifics went, the emphasis on the payback to the loan was, well, the onus was put more on the individuals on the SBA application than it was on the business, meaning they were focusing more on if the people just on their own could pay back this loan in 10 years feasibly than if the business's income would support the loan, which is very strange because the whole point is that the business is going to be at a point where you're theoretically going to be successful enough that it's going to just come out of the business. So that's again why the bigger deals, they put the onus on the business. Like, okay, they're asking for 450,000. Let's look at the business. Yeah, they got the basis, they got that 10%. Let's look at the business really quick though.
Exactly. Hopefully that has helped you guys if you are considering doing an SBA deal. Hopefully you can learn from our mistakes and not make them yourself. It took us a lot of time to learn this. And, I consider it a little bit of an education that we paid for in time and money. And hopefully that education can serve you. Till the next time, though, we will see you every Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Deal Flow Live. I've been your host, Brody Vinson.
And I've been Ryan Santo.
And find us on LinkedIn. Let us know what you want us to talk about on the show, particular industries, particular deals, anything like that. We'll break them down live and give our opinion. See you on the next one.
See you.
Oops. How do I?
We're professionals.
There we go.